and welcome to my first video version of Back to School, where learning and liberty meet. I am Kathy Wells, and I am videoing in my bedroom because that's where my computer is. And I really tried for about half an hour to create a green screen effect, and I couldn't do it. So you get to look at my room, grandmother's quilt behind me that's falling apart, sadly, and a really uncluttered area. Yeah, that's because I moved all the clutter out of the way to make you think I cleaned, and I didn't. So, what I want to talk to you about tonight is CSCOPE, which is a curriculum that's used in about 80% of Texas schools. It was developed here in Texas, from my understanding, and the important thing about this, like why does this apply to my podcast, which is about the history of education and liberty, because well, it directly applies, and you'll see, and I'll make commentary as we go. So, okay, let me just say, whoa, stop doing that. Let me just say, first of all, that I'm making this video, not because I don't like podcasting, I actually do, but because a friend of mine asked me if I would start putting this material on YouTube so other people could listen to it, I guess, in a forum or a venue that's more accessible. Great, okay. So, but you know what I'm really dreading is the comments. Have you ever read, not listened to, the user comments on YouTube? They're really nasty sometimes. And you think, this is the mentality of the comments. Okay. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about is a curriculum called CSCOPE. And this has been in the news in our little town here quite a bit. And I have read the newspaper articles concerning it, and in one of the articles a woman named Jeannie McGregor was mentioned, and I just looked her up and called her because I wanted to know more about what she knew. And basically she seems to be somewhat of an expert in the area, and I'm going to go through my notes here, so if I'm not looking right at the camera, which I will try to do, forgive me. Actually, can I move this up? No. All right, well, I'll try anyway. This is all new to me. Okay, so basically, let me outline a little bit of, she was talking really, really fast because she really knows a lot about this, and I was just like, slow down. Let me outline what she told me about the curriculum, and more than that, about how school curriculum is chosen in Texas and how this particular curriculum was created. And if I get something wrong here, I'll try to correct it later. I'm just trying to go off of what she told me. Okay, so basically in Texas, there are regions. So I don't know how many we have, but there's just different regions. And the regions are usually run by ex-superintendents, which would make sense. It's like a hierarchy, right? So first year teacher, principal, superintendent, region manager, or director, or whatever. So apparently, the region director in the Austin region, Region 13, or maybe a bunch of region directors got together and created this curriculum called CSCOPE. And I guess the idea is that they push it on all the superintendents because, I don't know, it's a good old boy network. I don't know. They're ex-superintendents. They are all friends. I'm not sure. I mean, it's a big state. I can't imagine them all being friends. But at any rate, they kind of push it on the different school districts. Okay, so what's the problem? Well, aside from the fact that, well, let's just get into it. Okay, so the first problem would be, and let me just read you a quote that this woman had in the paper. Speaking of the educators who designed CSCOPE, she said, they promote a socialist concept, social constructivism, in the classroom, filled with lessons and test questions that have anti-American and anti-Christian slant, and veteran teachers see right through the substandard product. Okay, so that's where she's coming from. But here, okay, so, well, here's part of the problem. Apparently, the ex-superintendents, the regional directors who write this curriculum, do so on taxpayer time. Okay, so we're paying for this curriculum to be written. Okay, well, you'll see why that's important in a minute. Okay, you've heard me talk and talk and talk if you've listened to my podcast. And by the way, my podcast is backtoschool.podomatic.com, or you can access it on iTunes by looking for Back to School. So you've heard me talk a lot about socialism. You've heard me talk about the roots of socialism. You've heard me talk about socialism in education. I don't think I need to explain much more about socialism to you. If you don't get it, go back and listen to my podcast. Okay, so what is the premise that this curriculum is sold under? Okay, in case you didn't know, this is how Texas education works in my understanding. I guess the State Board of Education puts out standards every year called the TEKS, T-E-K-S, that detail by grade what every child is supposed to know. I looked at some of the TEKS standards. It almost gave me a headache. I was thinking this is a ridiculous way to do this, but whatever. It's government, right? It's got to be ridiculous. I mean, like if I was going to teach, let's say, second grade math, I would get a second grade math book and teach it cover to cover, and I'd divide the lessons up into the 36 weeks that I had to teach, and I'd teach lessons, and we'd review and we'd play games, and it'd be fun, and we'd teach math. But that's not how TEKS is organized. I could actually read you some of the second grade TEKS requirements, but it's like every little specific little, children must be able to do this and this, and it's like these little specific things that they would learn to do if you just ran them through a basic math curriculum. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, but anyway, there's got to be more work for the teachers, right? It can't just be simple enough to just like go through a math book. You've got to check off all these little checks. Anyway, so traditionally, I think when I was in school, we had TOS testing, and then there was tax testing, and there was like TOKES testing, I don't know, and TEEDS testing. Anything that starts with T, I guess, they're going to make a test for it. But the newest thing, it's a new thing, it's called the STAR test. And everybody is up in arms about the STAR test. It hasn't come out yet, but it's supposed to come out soon. And these are the standardized testing for the state of Texas, right? And everybody's worried about the STAR test because it's supposed to be so hard. And how are we going to make it? Oh, it's crazy. Which is funny because the standards for modern education are just kind of hilarious. Like, it's hard, whatever. Anyway, so the way that these people sell this curriculum that they made is they basically say, well, it's going to prepare you for the STAR test, which is, like how school districts get money and how they're basically graded. And if they're not graded well, people want to be there, so they won't get as much money. I mean, it's all a package deal. Remember, I'm a libertarian, and I don't think we should have public education. I think education should be controlled by little townships and cities. I'm against consolidation. I'm against federal government in education. I'm against the state government in education. I don't think anybody should tell any community how to educate their kids but that community. And part of the reason, this is my rant, part of the reason why parents have abdicated their responsibility in training and educating their children is because we've had all this involvement by the government. So anyway, oh, my screen went black. That's not good. All right, so continuing on, let's see. All right, so here are some of the things that this lady was saying about this curriculum that she didn't like. And gosh, there's so much, so bear with me. All right, the first thing that she said was that it's heavily micromanaged, that the region center, which is over the districts in that region, has lessons lined out by the day. So the idea is that everyone using this curriculum all around the state is on the same page of the book at the same time. Now, on one level, I understand that. In our classical curriculum that we do, it sort of works the same way, roughly. Everybody in classical conversations all over the world that's in a community is on the same cycle that semester. But everybody's not going to, people start at different times their semester. So, at the end of the semester, everybody will have completed the same material, but it's not exactly the same thing. So on one hand, I understand that, but where I disagree is in this micromanaging thing. And this is what the lady said. And please, I haven't vetted this, so I can't. And I will tell you wherever I found discrepancies. So I can't vouch for this, but she's supposed to be an expert, so. Okay, so the idea is that that there's lessons planned out every day, but that the timeline is very, very rigid. And she told me that a principal might come through with an iPad and check each classroom, and if the teacher is on the wrong page, that she gets written up. Or if, let me go ahead and get into that. No, let me get into that later. Well, I'll just say it now, that if there's not enough students working together in a group for a certain percentage of time, that the teacher gets written up. But I will explain that later. All right, so let's just continue on. Another complaint about the curriculum is that it removes parental involvement, and I can certainly talk about that in a minute because we're going to read a quote about that. Another concern about the curriculum, this is awesome. All right, the curriculum changes with the text standards. And why would the text standards change? I mean, has education really changed that much in the last 100 years as far as the knowledge that needs to be known by students graduating from high school? We've got reading, we've got writing, we've got arithmetic. I mean, we're going to add some computer skills in. I understand that. History, we're going to add a little history, but not that much. We've got 9/11, we've got some major events. But, things aren't going to change that much. So why the text standards would be changing, I don't understand. But that's a different topic. So this curriculum is only given to the teachers, this is my understanding, in 6-week increments. It went black again. So the teacher can't see her entire scope and sequence for the year. She can't, it's not like saying, here is the 2nd grade Saxon math book. You are to finish this book by the end of the year. You only know what you're supposed to do for those 6 weeks. You can't look ahead. You don't know what's coming down the pike. You don't know if it's coherent, cohesive. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at it. I hope it is, but I don't know. And so that's a real problem. It's a real problem. And let's see. Oh, the lady I was talking to was talking about direct instruction, and she was just comparing her older way of educating to the newer way, and just talking about how young teachers don't know the difference, and which is true. She was talking about the difference between direct instruction and direct inquiry, and she likes direct instruction, which to me is not really a good term, but semantics, we didn't talk about terminology. So by direct instruction, she meant that the teacher is in charge of the classroom, and that if the children can't make connections for the kids, the teacher will make the connection for the child. Again, not necessarily a classical approach if you're dealing with grammar age children, because there shouldn't be many connections to make for kids of that age, but setting that aside. And then she was saying that CSCOPE is based on direct inquiry, which, and I've seen a lot of this, is just asking kids to talk about things. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? I don't know, you're the teacher. What do you think about it? Anyway, and so one of the greatest results that she saw in this curriculum is that children wind up questioning all authority. They question church authority, parental authority, all of it, which I think kids do anyway, kind of naturally. However, I think she's got some valid points about this curriculum. I'm going to get some lotion. Hands are dry. All right, so I want to read you some, and by the way, Obama instituted a program called the Common Core. So I think that was supposed to basically do the same thing nationally, like put everybody on the same page, and only 3 states refused it, and Texas was one of them, which shows that we're still doing our own thing. But are we really? I think actually the CSCOPE program really coincides with the Common Core. So see, that's just a backdoor way to sign Texas up for something they didn't want to sign on for, and that's classic socialist propaganda. It's so common to use terminology and just switch words around and just basically lie to people. I know you're lying to them, and it doesn't matter. So Texas could vote down the Common Core, but these people are just going to put the curriculum in the schools anyway, right? Because nobody's checking on them. They're the government. You have to check on them. You have to keep them on a very short leash. So, at any rate, all right, I want to read you a couple of quotes, and then I'll start ranting. All right, the first quote, I love this one. Okay, this is just a snippet from a San Antonio article, a newspaper article. Senators asked him, that guy's name is Wade LeBay, and I think he headed up this whole thing. So they asked him, Wade, to read from a 6th grade lesson plan that showed international flags and asked students to notice that socialist and communist countries use symbolism on their flags, and ask them what symbols they would use if designing a flag for a new socialist country. Are there words? No, there are no words. This curriculum also, by the way, calls the Boston Tea Party a terrorist act, and also says that Allah is another way for the Hebrew God, another name for the Hebrew God. No. Anyway, all right, okay, so that's bad right there, right? But you're like, okay. All right, this next one is what sent me over the edge. The Houston Republican, and that's talking about a guy, a Republican senator in the state house, or in the state senate, named Dan Patrick. And he doesn't like this curriculum because he's pretending to be a conservative. That's just the libertarian in me. Pay no attention. So this Houston Republican also objected to what he called the program's lack of transparency. Listen to this. Complaining that parents can't access lesson plans. CSCOPE's creators say such materials aren't available publicly because of the intellectual property concerns, but elected officials should be allowed access. Okay, let me just read that again in case you missed that. Parents can't access lesson plans. You remember when your kid came home from school with a textbook, or, I was a kid, I came home with a textbook and all the lessons were in there, and I answered the questions or did whatever. And if my mom wanted to look at the book, she could, because she didn't, because she, wasn't worried about me, but she could look at the lessons. In this program, you, the parent, can't look at the kids' lessons. You have no idea what they're learning about. You can't look at it. You don't have access to it. There's no textbook. And in our school district, our idiotic administration bought iPads for all the children. Don't even get me started. But we don't have enough money for teachers, right? But we got money for iPads, please. Anyway, because we need to dumb them down faster is why. What we really need to have them on is electronic devices all day instead of reading good literature. Anyway, okay, so this made me completely livid. Let me go back to talking about other parental involvement issues. And this is not just for CSCOPE. I have one of my best friends in the Austin area, and my godson is in public school there for a short time, I hope. Please. And she was telling me that his daddy helps him with his math work. I think he's in fourth grade, 10 years old. Yeah, fourth grade. And so he comes home, and now, you've seen, I don't know if you've seen the video on how they're teaching math now. It's a nightmare. Instead of just teaching one algorithm for long division or, multiplication, an algorithm is just a way of doing math. Like if you're doing long division and you write the numbers and then you're doing all this and, working it out. That's how most of us learn to do long division. Well, now they're teaching several different ways to do it. They're teaching several different ways to do this. It's very confusing to children. They need to not understand what they're doing, or even choose what they need to be taught how to do it, and repeat it until they know how to do it very quickly. Later, when they're more in a dialectic stage or rhetorical stage, or even in the quadrivium stage when they're college age, they can discover and explore all the wonderful ways that they want to do mathematics. So anyway, my godson at some point has told his father, you don't know how to do this. My teacher knows how to do it correctly, and that's not the way she does it. We have to do it the other way. Okay. You should be able to help your fourth grader with math without there being some sort of weird, adding is adding, subtracting is subtracting, multiplying is multiplying, dividing is dividing. There shouldn't be this disconnect between the child and the parent, but that's exactly what's being created. There's a disconnect created between the child and the parent. I believe on purpose, not by the teachers, but by the people who create these curriculums. And it's insidious. Oh, there was a word I was supposed to use besides insidious. Perfidious? I'm going to have to look that up again. Anyway, so major problem with that curriculum as far as that goes. Just the parental involvement thing is huge. And you know what? We have absolutely, as a society, abdicated our responsibility to educate our children. And there was a quote in one of the newspaper articles that I thought was, did I look up another word for asinine? No. Asinine? This dad was like, I put my trust in my elected officials. Why? The people on the school board, all of them aren't even teachers. And even if they were, what would that mean? I mean, y'all, elementary school teachers, when they go through college, aren't taught how to teach kids to read. Are you understanding me? They're not taught that. Stop trusting these people. They have good hearts. That doesn't mean they know squat about educating kids. It's sad, but it's true. Talk to any homeschooling mom, I promise you, she'll know more about the history of education and know more about different educational techniques than just about any public school teacher you've ever met. Because we have to. And that's not a knock on public school teachers, because they all get into that arena because they love children and they want to help children, but it's time to let go of the institutional thinking and actually start helping kids. So let's see if I have any more notes here that I want to cover before I just go on a complete rant about socialism and all this. Oh, I do have a slight complaint about Senator Dan Patrick, who is a Republican, which is supposed to mean conservative or somewhere near the Constitution. But of course, the fact that he's involved in the public education debate shows that he's not a constitutionalist, because if he was, he would know that the federal government has zero business in education, and he would probably be trying to get the state government out of localized education, because he would understand that consolidation is not a good solution for education. All it does is take power out of the hands of the parents and the community and put it in the hands of people hundreds of miles away who don't really know your kids or necessarily care about them. Okay, what was that? I think my smoke detector just went off. All right, so Dan Patrick said something. He also introduced a bill. I'm just quoting from memory here. This is rough. He also introduced a bill in the legislature to provide more, to revamp the high school education requirements, to provide more like workforce training. Dan, you had me up to that point. And I seriously thought about emailing you, and then I thought, you know, it's like tinkling in the wind is what it's like. Why even bother? Just why bother? I mean, how could I explain to this guy that the point of education is not to get a job? And I want to talk about that again for a minute, because I've only talked about it like 1,000 times, and you need to hear it again. Let's go back to the little house principle. One-room schoolhouse. Everybody in town was a farmer except the Olsen kids, who were bratty, store kids. So everybody in that town was going to grow up to be a farmer, except the Olsen kids. So why go to school? Why learn to read? Why learn to write or spell or study history or anything? Why learn to do any of that? Because they understood that working was working and education was education. So they didn't just learn the skills they needed to learn to be a farmer and then just go, okay, I'm done with school, I'm going home now. They stayed in school as long as they wanted to be educated. And you remember, like the parents on that show were pretty well educated, and they were farmers. So we've lost something in the last 150 years. We've lost the concept of humanity, of educating a child so that they will be human, not so they can go get a job. And I will say that the woman I spoke to on the phone was very nice, but she is very much about vocational training, and she kind of talked about that a little bit, about how we need to prepare kids for these vocations. And I'm not against an economy and making money and vocationalism. I'm not against that at all. I think we've got the cart before the horse here, or as we say in Texas sometimes, we have things back-assards. We need to teach a humanities curriculum where children are learning how to think and dream and recognize truth, beauty, and virtue, which are the three important things in classical education. We learn to recognize truth, beauty, and virtue in the world and in ourselves and in others. And we honor those things and celebrate those things, and we look for those things in a classical education. And that's not specific to any particular religion. And that's a balancing act, particularly in a state like Texas where most everyone is Christian. But you can recognize truth, beauty, and virtue in all religions, in all people. Those qualities pretty much span all cultures. So you don't have to do it from a particularly religious slant. But anyway, so that's the point of a humanities-based education, is when we graduate students from those type of schools, we want them to be able to think about the world critically. We want them to be able to recognize what is good, what is right, what is true, what is beautiful. It's not that we don't want them to be able to go out and start a business or work in any kind of an industry. Children who come out of classical programs can do the exact same math, the exact same science. It's the premise is different. And as I was going through all this information, I think the major question I had, besides just my grunting about consolidation and about how parents should be in charge of things if they hadn't abdicated their responsibility, was that the major problem I had was that what is the point? Like, what is the goal? What are we doing? Are we educating children just to get them to college? Well, I think we can safely say that because we divide students up into intellectual classes and we say, okay, now you're a dumb kid. You go in these remedial classes over here. You're a smart kid. You go into these advanced classes over here. So we segregate them by age, and then we segregate them by intelligence levels, which is very damaging, by the way, and really erroneous, because I can tell you that in my own family, I have a child who would have been held back a year, if not more, if not moved to special education classes, because she's slow at learning to read. Well, actually, she'd probably be on par with public school, but in my estimation, she's slow in learning to read. She's not stupid. She's very intelligent. She's very bright. She's very witty. She's very funny. She can do all kinds of different things, math, science. She loves. She does her history stuff. I mean, she makes a lot of connections. She's just slow in learning to read. So when we, oh gosh, I'm ranting. So when we age segregate or even grade segregate like that, what we do is we stigmatize children who may be late bloomers or early bloomers, or, you know, you're a nerd and you're a moron and all these type of things, which are totally unnecessary and would not happen in a one-room schoolhouse environment. Gosh, where was I going with all that? Just to say that we've lost the point, and I don't know, for instance, in my school district, what parents want. I mean, I think I've heard some parents actually say they just want their kids out of the house. So they don't really care what goes on in school. I don't want to be ugly, so I'm not going to make a comment about that. Except to say that's like sending your 6-year-old to a stranger's house all day and saying, well, I hope they're okay. It's not the state's job to raise your child. It's not the state's job to educate your child. It's your job. And if you're going to abdicate your responsibility to somebody else, you darn sure better make sure they're doing a good job. And not just show up at school board meetings and say, well, I trust you. Why? Why do you trust those people? Why? Why would you do that? Have you even sat in a classroom? You're not even able to access your kids' lesson plans. It's moronic to trust people. Because they have a college degree, you're going to trust them? I don't know. Anyway, so, it's almost time to wrap it up. And I don't even have my intro or exit music. So sad. You'll have to listen to the podcast to hear that. Anyway, so this is the deal on the CSCOPE thing. I am looking into it. I'm continuing to look into it. I had a whole litany of questions to ask this lady that I emailed her, and I hope I get a response back from her. It's just really sad to me to see the culmination of 100 years of socialist agenda in my state, which has traditionally been a conservative state and an independent state. And it really makes me irritated at our superintendent, Mr. Townsend, because apparently he's supposed to be serving the people and the parents, right? He's supposed to be working for us. But you have to remember, he's a government official, right? He's a government official. So he works for himself. I'm sorry, Mr. Townsend, I'm sure you're a very nice man, but really, who gave you the authority to pick the curriculum? I know the school board did and the parents did. Well, they shouldn't have, but that's a separate story. Anyway, all right, I'm going to wrap it up, and I guess I'll do some more YouTube videos so you can look at my grandmother's quilt and my bed. Like my little quote above my bed, though. I'll tell you what it says. It's really nice. It says, "What lies behind us and what lies before us is nothing compared to what lies within us." It's nice, isn't it? All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up now, and I will talk to you later. Thanks. Bye-bye.